on the Robert Elms Show on BBC Radio London, and the man sitting opposite me is no stranger at all. He's been on the show many times over the years. I've played the music he's involved in many times over the years, and he's also currently involved in the Walthamstow Borough of Culture project because it's his borough. He's an East End boy. He's also an OBE and now a listed Londoner, and he's Talvin Singh. Talvin, welcome to the show.
Lovely to see you, Robert. Thank you for the invitation, as always.
Well, you've been all over the place lately, for very good reasons indeed, because your borough's been kind of in the spotlight and you've been involved in that.
Yeah, it's. I mean, last night being out there with my two sisters in the cold, but you know, it was amazing for us to experience that because we never kind of thought, we never had that kind of vision to the future that this borough would really be kind of celebrated in this kind of way.
Is this where you grew up? Was this home from when you were kids? Or
yeah, my grandfather kind of made the shift from Africa, so India via Africa, yeah. East Africa. And
was he one of the Ugandan Asians, as they were dubbed
exactly,
at the time?
Yeah, precisely. So we, you know, he had brought that house in the late 50s, and so we've been quite a kind of established as well as active Sikh community in the borough.
Is there a large Sikh community in that part?
There is, but to be honest, a lot of them have kind of moved out and to Redbridge, the borough of Redbridge, Chigwell, you know, pretty soulless places.
That classic migration, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty soulless places, you know.
But you've stayed where you are.
Yeah, well, luckily I didn't so much because, you know, my work takes me to India, traveling, and I also spend a lot of time. I have a kind of studio base in Suffolk, and I love spending time in Suffolk.
Yep.
So, but I think for my mum and dad, the biggest asset they could give their children was a tube station right opposite a house.
That really helps.
You know, it does help.
I had one opposite mine, or 2 minutes away.
And because of that, I had access to the whole of London as a real youngster. And, you know, it's amazing.
Let's look at the musical career. Were you taught... I mean, tabla is the instrument you're famous for, I guess.
Yeah, tabla's the kind of prime instrument which kind of, you know... kind of put me into the world, the ocean of Indian classical music.
Is that what you listened to growing up at home?
I would say no. I think my dad had a very eclectic record collection, but I got drawn to Indian classical music from the Sikh temples because music is a big part of our kind of gospel traditions, and so. But I was always listening to. I loved. You know, I was a kind of wannabe mod.
Yeah.
Basically, I was just listening to all the mod stuff. And then I got into electronic music.
Yeah.
So I've had a very parallel, I would say, a kind of a diverse parallel.
But that's
kind of,
so often the case, isn't it? People who sing in church and then love listening to hip hop or reggae or whatever. Do you know what I mean? And whatever community people are from, the Irish kids who grew up listening to Catholic music and yet were into the Pogues. Do you know what I mean? It was all...
No, and I think music's one of those things where it should be all-inclusive. We should learn from each other's kind of cultural repertoires, but there needs to be some dialogue with music as opposed to kind of this segregation.
And that's why London is such an extraordinary font of this, because all of those cultures overlap and entwine, don't they?
Yeah, it makes London very, very special. And I think the 90s was a period where we really started realizing that. And I remember a lot of Europeans coming to interview me, and they were so excited about London, and because this would never happen anywhere else, and it never has happened anywhere else but London.
And we have to make sure it keeps happening in London.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's one of the important things, that it's still a place where people can bring their cultures and their communities and let them kind of mingle together.
Yeah, exactly. I did a few workshops over the last 6 months in the borough, and it was just amazing to interact with all the amazing young talent of the borough. But we still have problems because, as you know, as we all know, the things which have been happening,
the knife crime stuff,
exactly,
and
I think we just need, you know, we need to provide more kind of artistic, creative resources, and that's I think the remedy. other than many other remedies. But
but it's one of the things, isn't it?
Yeah,
I tell you what,
is.
I think is really important as well. Something you said earlier on. You said you grew up near a tube station, so you had London, and I'm exactly the same. I grew up. I had Red Rovers when I was a kid on the buses. I would get the tube into town. That's one of the other things you've got to do with young people.
Yeah.
You've got to take the blinkers off.
Exactly, Robert. Because, like, for example, people which live in that borough know the problematic kind of dark areas, and like there's an area called Baker's Arms, and it's neither in Leighton, neither in Walthamstow, so it doesn't have a tube station, doesn't really have a station,
and it gets closed,
and it has no hub, and it gets closed in, and it feels very dark, and I think so. Yeah, I hope this is a kind of enlightenment as opposed to a celebration.
You've always worked with young people, haven't you? So it's been part of your sort of mission, if you like.
Yeah, no, and I would like to more so, kind of engage, because I think you don't want the pond to become stale. I think to teach and is to learn, and I think I need to engage myself more.
That's really interesting. Some of my jazz friends say there's an expression in the jazz world, which is that each one must teach one, that you pass
amazing.
it on,
I love that
you move along the baton.
Yeah, exactly. Because especially in jazz, because it's based on improvisation, so you constantly have to be reminded of how things should be so natural in your performance. And as soon as it becomes rigid, it's over.
You say you go back to India a lot. How is your music perceived in India?
I think I've had a good hand in kind of changing the music scene in India.
Really?
In terms of the youth culture. India's never had a youth culture, and I think in the late 90s, I think, what we were doing paved a whole nother kind of new kind of genre of how the classical traditions can remain classical, but yet can be kind of in the contemporary kind of landscape. And I think I definitely borrowed that from the music I was inspired by over here, like amazing. That most of the brilliant electronic musicians I know have also studied like classical music. So you kind of learn to deconstruct what you've kind of learned.
Specifically, what have you been working on with the Welcome to the Forest thing?
Well, I kind of got asked or commissioned, in the kind of logistical terms of a piece which kind of engages the young talent of the borough, and I made sure that piece kind of projected the sound of the borough. So like last night, it was amazing. I kind of went there last night with a camera as a punter, and it was incredible.
Did a lot of people turn out?
A lot of people turned up. It was crazy because it was on rotation.
Yeah.
So people just constantly like coming to the rounds and staying there and filming it. So many people filmed it, and so for me, it really, I think it was very successful in terms of what I set out to do was to kind of identify the borough and its kind of sound, because it does have a sound, and that I'm talking about like the kind of sounds of the forests, as well as the kind of beats, like the kind of drum and bass, jungle, the grime beats, which have been made in that borough.
It's really important, I think. I grew up in the London borough of Barnet, up on on the northern fringes, and it's really important that the outer London boroughs feel part of this collective of London, isn't it?
Yeah,
because sometimes
definitely.
they can get a bit forgotten. We can concentrate on the centre and the gleaming new buildings and galleries and bridges and all of that stuff, and sometimes the outer London boroughs, which is where most people live, can get a bit overlooked. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I think what surprised all of us was how Waltham Forest has incredible, beautiful listed buildings.
That town hall's glorious.
Yeah, and back in the days, we thought, we kind of thought that like these buildings were just like old pieces, and there was nothing modern, or, we were looking for modernist kind of architecture. And I think now when you see them, it's just like, wow, they're beautiful, beautiful, beautiful buildings. The town hall is stunning. So the piece we did was a visual mapping. It was a visual sonic mapping over the town hall. And
it's a great backdrop.
Yeah, it's a great backdrop. I mean, and also Leighton itself has beautiful buildings like the Leighton Technical Institute, the Grand Town Hall building,
the old town hall, which it was now a great pub.
Yeah, yeah, and upstairs is a beautiful space. And
do you ever get criticised for not being classical enough, for not being purist enough, for not? Do you see what I mean? Did you ever have to go through that?
Yeah, well, I think because I'm so eclectic in my own taste, I think it also has had maybe a slightly kind of I've been over influenced by my kind of diversity in taste of music, and that could be a problem because I think if you're too diverse as an artist, you can confuse your audience.
But clearly, you spent a lot of time mastering the canon, didn't you? And then you can go on and take it wherever you like.
Yeah, I mean, in that deep ocean, one's never a master, because all the great work is in terms of classical repertoire. All the great work has been done before, and I think even today, and that's the reason why even the music today, the really exciting music we hear today, the contemporary music, we're finding our own new space now because we know so much great work has been done in classical music.
But it's almost like a new language, isn't it? Which it's like in the way that the slang of London takes in the rhythms of all the different people who come here.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, this is it. It's it's an exciting city. It can be a difficult city to have your breath in it. I wish there's more etiquette in London. I don't think, people keep in very, very close spaces here. And I think the tube, the London transport kind of gives us that gift in a way, just to keep our own little space.
Sometimes we have to relax a bit.
Yeah, because when I started spending time like in Suffolk, it was amazing how people just like the first thing they is like good morning or good afternoon, whatever happens. And I think that simple kind of etiquette is really important.
I'm with you on that one. We're listening to our listed Londoner of the day, who is Talvin Singh, and we're going to hear a lot more about Talvin's London. But first up, at 10:30, it's time for the news headlines here on BBC Radio London, brought to you by Matthew Schofield.